Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to this mega webinar. I'm talking about Black, and it is a real testament to the times that we live in that so many people have registered. I think we have something like 1,500 people who've registered to take part today, which is incredible. I mean, just think about it. In what world would you ever have 1,500 people tuning in on a Tuesday night to talk about race? This is huge. And after the events of the summer, every one of us has an opportunity to think about how we can make a difference. Maybe you're not Black. Maybe you've never thought about this issue before. Well, now's the time to have that conversation. Now's the time to get into this topic and really try to open it up and get under the hood and try to figure out what part you play in all of this. Because the fact of the matter is, every single one of us, we're either part of the problem or we're a part of the solution. And it's really hard to be not one of those two things. We're one or the other. And this evening is where we really bring it all together. We look under the hood and we really get stuck in to some of this. And we're delighted, of course, that we have Sir John Parker, who is going to help us think through this. It's a wicked problem that we've got. A wicked problem is it's a social or a cultural issue that's really hard to get your arms around, really hard to grasp and to come up with a solution for. But this is one of those problems, like climate, really difficult. But we're going to try to do that this evening. And by the way, we don't have a choice, because the next generation is going to hold us accountable. They're going to look back and they're just going to say, what did you do? And they're going to curse us for our indifference and for our self-indulgence and for all those things that we didn't do that we should have done. This is something that we absolutely have to get our arms around. So it's why we're here. It's about thinking about this world that we live in and asking ourselves, can I make a difference? Is there a way that I can play a part in this? So we have a packed hour ahead of us. We're going to be hearing from Sir John Parker himself in a moment. We'll get a chance, by the way, to put some questions to Sir John. We've had some questions coming in. You'll be able to put some questions into the chat and we'll pick those up and then we will put those to Sir John. And then we're also going to hear from Talk About Black's very own Gavin Lewis, who's at BlackRock, and Justin Onokusi, who is at Elgin. We're going to hear both of them. They're going to talk to us and they're going to bring things to a close, and then I'll wrap with some concluding remarks around 6 o'clock. I thought, Legal in General is doing some great things in this space, and I just wanted to say thank you for hosting this event and making it happen. I think, again, as I said, to have this many people in an auditorium talking about race is great. So thank you so much. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for hosting this. And I thought what we would do very quickly is just work out who we have in the room, because this is about race, so let's look at it through that lens. And I was just going to put up a poll. Please, very quickly, just fill it in. Let's do it through the lens of color. I mean, never been done before, but with almost 1,000+ people, let's ask ourselves this question: how do you identify? Do you see yourself as Black, white, Asian? And I know Asian might mean Chinese, might mean Indian. I get all that, and there are different distinctions. I get it, but or other. How do you, what do you think? Who do we have? And then what we can do is we're going to put that up and we're going to just have a little look at who we've got in the house. I have my suspicions what the numbers are going to look like. It's going to come out in percentages, but let's just see how many people we have. How do you identify? Do you see yourself as Black? Do you see yourself as white? Look at that. Now, I've got to tell you that that's a pretty amazing result, because we have an equal split. 41.9% of you identify as Black, 41.2% identify as white. It's like equal, people, Black and white, ebony and ivory. There it is. Asian 7.9% and mixed 7.9%, and other 1%. So make of that what you will. But I thought I'd also do this. Why don't we take the temperature in the room? Let's have a sense of how you're all feeling. Because, over the last 6 months, I've talked to a lot of people, and I get, you say to people, how are you? And especially when you have this conversation, people come back with a lot of different answers. I've had a lot of answers where people just have said, I'm just, I'm bewildered. I don't know where to go next. I don't know what to do. Let's just take the temperature. Let's put the poll up and let's ask ourselves this question. Are you optimistic right now? I mean, how are you feeling right now in yourself? Are you optimistic? Maybe you're sad. You have a sense of sadness about you, and yeah, maybe you're just exhausted, frankly. You're totally drained. Maybe you're angry. Or maybe you're just indifferent and you're here this evening, but you're indifferent. How do you feel? Tell us how you feel. What are these? So let's put the poll up, and then we are going to get you to answer. And I got to tell you that this is interesting, right? So optimistic, 41%. Most people in the room are optimistic, and that's powerful. But I got to say, 30%, almost a third of you are exhausted. That's a big number when you think how many people we have. And then almost 20%, almost 1 in 5 says, I'm sad. And this is, we've got to listen to this and we've got to fix it. So sad or exhausted, over 50% are sad or exhausted. Angry, 5.5%, and a tiny proportion are like, yeah, I'm indifferent. Well, one thing we are clear is that virtually nobody here doesn't care. Most people here, you have a strong emotion and you've picked out one of them. Well, let's see if we can get ourselves to a better place in the next 45 minutes. Let's see what we can make happen. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Sir John Parker. I'll tell you a little bit about Sir John. He's currently chairman of Lang O'Rourke. He's a non-executive director of Carnival Corporation. He also chairs the advisory board of Spencer Stuart, and he chairs the review for government on ethnic diversity on boards. And he recently completed a review of UK naval shipbuilding strategy for the Ministry of Defence. So John was chairman of Anglo American, non-executive director of Airbus Group, deputy chairman of DP World Dubai, and chairman of National Grid. His CV and his bio I've never seen anything like it. They are so extensive. I spend the rest of the evening reading them, but I'll just sum it all up. He does a huge amount of voluntary work. He has honorary doctorates from several universities in the UK and Ireland. And his biography, The View from the Bridge, was published in 2018. In all of that, in the middle of all of it, he also found time to write the highly influential Parker Review. He's simply a titan of our times. And so, John, could I ask you now just to talk to us about the work that you've done, specifically on the original Parker Review, and then maybe we'll get into some questions after that. So thank you so much for joining us, Sir John.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, may I first thank all involved from LNG and their partner organizations for hosting this very important event. And thank you too for inviting me. It was the talented Sasha Dehan, the leader of the ESG team at LNG, which I've had great respect for over the years, who approached me a little while ago, would I speak to an investors gathering about the review. I assumed then it would be a small, intimate gathering, but my blood pressure took a leap last night when I learned it could be 1,600 people attending this evening. So hello, everybody out there, while I fasten my seatbelt. Indeed, I feel like a man who was making his first parachute jump. He was standing at the open door of the aircraft, extremely nervous, and his instructor was giving him some advice. You just remember to count to 3 things. When I give the command to jump, you jump well clear of the aircraft, you count to 10, and thirdly, you pull the ripcord and the chute should open. He obeyed everything. He pulled the ripcord and nothing happened, and he's heading to Earth at a great speed, still tugging on the ripcord, when he spied a man in a white boiler suit coming up from Earth at a great speed below him. And as the man got opposite, he shouted at him, "Do you know anything about parachutes?" And the man said, "No, and I don't know too much about gas boilers either." So I think that story simply underscores the importance of constantly improving our knowledge about our own specialism, whatever it is in life. And I'll be happy to share with you a little later the genesis of the review and the approach we took leading to the targets we published in 2016. For each FTSE 100 company, we recommended at least one person of color appointed by the end of 21, and for the FTSE 250, at least one person of color appointed by the end of 24. Now, before I move there, I do want to highlight and indeed pay tribute to the investment community in the UK for the important role they play in corporate life to bring about governance change and drive out excesses where it emerges. For example, in recent years, investors in dialogue with companies and with their policies and approaches on voting, etc., have, for example, addressed excessive percentage pension contributions, excessive increases in executive awards, placing greater focus on ESG, reducing and increasing support for diversity on boards, including support highlighted by LNG's position in support of our review targets on ethnic diversity. Now, all these initiatives place the governance of listed corporates in Britain at the leading edge of global corporate governance, which I've always seen as a competitive advantage. Now, all of you listening have a right to know whether I have practiced what I preach, and do I have much experience of gender and ethnic diversity in the boardroom? Well, over the past 25 years, I've endeavored to build boards with the best talent and broadest range of skill sets I could find, including gender and ethnic diverse candidates. For example, I started 25 years ago by appointing an ethnic diverse candidate to my first PLC board when I was chairman at Babcock International in the mid-90s. And this, I have to admit, was before appointing my first woman candidate, which I believe I've subsequently made up for, including the appointment of a range of ethnically diverse candidates to subsequent boards I've had the privilege to chair. For example, I think of Mondi, the global packaging and paper company, where I had the joy of having Cyril Ramaphosa, now South Africa's president, as my joint chairman. Cyril is a most able and magnanimous man. And that board also had gender diversity and ethnically diverse non-executives as well. At Anglo American, the global mining company, a range of ethnically diverse candidates and women have circulated through that board, mainly from South Africa, in Southern Africa, as they have served over the years. At probably my last PLC, the Pennon Group, where I stepped down just in July, I left behind an ethnically diverse woman as chair of REMCO, a woman to succeed me as chair, and a woman CEO. And I can assure you that that succession plan had the wholehearted support of the male members of the board. So let me turn now to the genesis of the review itself. I served on Lord Davies' committee, Women on Boards, and we published our report in 2011 with the target of achieving 25% women directors by 2015. We encountered a number of headwinds in getting there, with many in corporate life claiming the talent wasn't out there. The time was too short, but we just made it with massive personal intervention with company leaders from the then Secretary of State, Vince Cable. I was chatting to him post the target being met, and we talked about the unfinished business of ethnic diverse talent being brought into the boardroom and what experience I had of it. It led me to be invited to lead the review, and then the coalition government was replaced, and we had to await the backing of Sajid Javid, the new Secretary of State at BEIS, and the support was freely given. We had, however, to find our own funding to cover publication, secretariat, and research, and EY stepped in and still remain very committed, and they were later followed by support from Linklaters. We established a highly competent, diverse steering group, which you can find their identities on the web, with Cranfield University handling research. So turning now to our research and the approach to target setting. We did extensive research with excellent support from Cranfield into the current ethnic diverse representation on our FTSE 100 boards, which showed that less than 50% had such representation. Our research also demonstrated the significant demographic change taking place at home and overseas. Today, for example, in the UK, population is around 14%, and by 2050, some projections suggest it could be growing to even 30%. Overseas, between now and 2050, half of the world's population growth will come from only 9 countries, 5 in Africa, 3 in Asia, and 1 in South America. So the reality is that demographic change is happening quite rapidly at home and overseas. Research also showed that FTSE 100 companies generally get about 75% of their sales from overseas, and the FTSE 250 around 50%. So we concluded that there were 2 obvious pillars to focus on in a world of significant demographic change, and that it makes business logical sense for company boards to be aligned with, first, their customer bases, and secondly, the search for future management and board talent. We also recommended the development of the ethnic pipeline and clarity in annual reporting, etc., and the amendment of some data protection issues which made headhunters nervous about tagging candidates in their databases as ethnically diverse. So what principles did we follow then in setting targets? We decided to follow the well thought through principles on which Women on Boards target setting was based, on both timescale in the 5 years and as a proportion relative to the 50% of women in the population. And this approach targets 1 by N21 ethnic candidates, given that the FTSE 100 boards have on average around 10 directors. Now, we recognize that FTSE 250 boards are smaller in numbers and therefore turnover is inevitably slower, so we gave to 2024. So what was the reaction and what is the progress? Yes, of course, we had some I would describe as mild negative reaction from some company chairs. For example, is the talent really out there? Or is this just one more issue we have to deal with? But generally, much more muted than in the early days of Women on Boards. I personally had not a single company chairman challenge me on the business case or the approach we took to targeting. By Q3 2019, BEIS embarked on a survey of companies which showed that we'd now got to 63% of the FTSE 100 boards had then met the target. Now, this build-up follows a not dissimilar pattern of a gradual build toward the target as we experienced on Women on Boards, where in year 5, significant momentum got underway, and it was only in the final weeks of year 5 was the target actually met. What we do know is that there has been further progress in the first half of 2020, despite COVID delaying a number of board recruitments. An encouraging development for me is that all the boards of the top 4 mining companies listed in London, BHP, Rio, Anglo, Glencore, have now met the target. On wider support for the review, government ministers and BEIS, being strongly represented on our steering group, have been committed and steadfast throughout, as has been the CBI, which has just yesterday launched their campaign, Change the Ratio, specifically supporting our review target. There is also now alignment with the 30% Club, which now supports ethnic targets for women, plus others, such as business in the community. We have now also a more proactive headhunting community, with some continuing to build their databases with enthusiasm of well-qualified, ethnically diverse candidates. The support of our investment community will be crucial, and a crucial ingredient in winning through, and L&G have already signaled their positive backing in public. So let me make just a few other personal observations. There was indeed debate and some political pressure during the Davis Women on Boards Committee, reimposing quotas. We resisted. At that time, in discussion with a raft of potential women candidates, none wanted to be appointed on the basis of a quota. And one told a colleague of mine, quotas were for fish. So I belong to the school where a volunteer is worth 10 conscripts. And so I believe aspirational targets will be sustainable in the long run. And as we appoint an ethnically talented person to each PLC board, that, in my view, will change the culture, not just in the boardroom, but send a powerful signal about recruitment policies throughout the company. And my experience with gender diversity and ethnic diversity is that it dilutes the influence of the once dominant macho male who doesn't listen enough or who has not learned to leave his ego at home. Teamwork is an important element in the boardroom, with respect for strong debate and different views. Diverse candidates, in my experience, can approach a tough topic at a very different angle of attack from many of us, and in turn come up with refreshing insight and approaches. Let me make some concluding remarks. To finally succeed, we now need all shoulders to the wheel to achieve first the 100 target, followed by the 250. And the sad events in the United States that led to Black Lives Matter movement has challenged all responsible corporate leaders to increase engagement and bring about lasting change by meeting these review targets in the board. Events such as this webcast also build momentum on this important issue for British business. In my view, we not only want to have the best governed companies in the world, but we also need to demonstrate to the world our leadership in society. And we in our companies must also focus on all our talent, particularly on the younger, diverse generation. All must feel safe. They must all feel valued. They must all feel secure, and above all, respected, regardless of gender or the color of their skin. And for those of us who have had the privilege to lead, we must ensure that the tone from the top in our boards is refreshed to support these meaningful changes and redouble our efforts to build a truly merit-based community of employees. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all.
Thank you, Sir John. That was absolutely superb. I just have a couple of questions. Maybe we could just spend a few minutes just going through them. So let me just ask you this, if I may, to begin with. One of the big problems that UK PLC faces, frankly, is that it is very hard to have the courageous conversation, which is how I like to describe it, at the very top. And you've run multiple boards, you've sat on any number of committees, you know what good looks like, you know how to get the best out of the people around the table. You got any insights into how we get, and I'm going to say it, how do we get whiteboards to have a conversation around race, to look in the mirror and to say, this isn't how it's supposed to be, and we need to do things differently. How do we have that conversation, and how do we make that the norm across the great companies of this nation?
Yeah. Well, I think the plates are shifting now. I'm actually optimistic. I hope we'll make our targets in time. The COVID has certainly interfered a bit, but I do believe achieving those targets will be an incredibly important signal to socially as well as business-wise in our boards. And I would emphasize what I said a few minutes ago, that I think it behoves every chairman, because I believe that if the chair and the chief executive in a board are committed to a line of action, it will happen. And it took me a long time on my corporate journey to understand the power you have to change things for the better. And I was advised in my early days of management to try to leave things better than you find them. And I think if we need to get every chairman and every chief executive in the FTSE 100 and now the FTSE 250, and I believe the CBI initiative will also be very supportive to us. It's going to engage more people, and it's that engagement we have to have. And I believe that it's so critical to have the chair sit with the board and really review and refresh the values in the company at this stage. And if the values and the commitment from the top, the tone from the top is there, it will change the culture in the company. And if we're going to ensure we have an ethnic proper representation in the boardroom, diverse women, part of the diversity in the boardroom in women, and that we have a meritocracy in terms of recruitment and development and promotion. It's those things that ultimately change the face of corporate Britain. And I'm optimistic. I'm amazed how much change has happened, even in the last decade, in corporate boardrooms, some of which I pointed out at the very beginning. And that has been due to working hand in hand, sometimes through strong debate, I have to say, with ESG groups like L&G and so on. But change has happened for the better. And we have driven out some of the excesses that many of us were very, very uncomfortable about. And there are a lot of good people out there that are committed, that are engaged, and we need to grab the hearts and soul minds of the rest of them.
Yes, I thank you for that. And I take your point that there's been a lot of progress and that we've driven out a lot of the bad habits and practices that, I've been working now for 30 something years, and boy, it's been a journey, and it is about values and it is about culture. And there's no doubt that we've come on a long journey, but I still can't help feel that a lot of companies play that card, the one that says, well, we're getting there. We're not quite there yet, but we're on the way, and one day I'm sure we'll be there. Yeah. And we're not there yet, and we're some distance away.
That's why I really think it's so important. First of all, I believe in deeds, not words. And the deeds for me will be the delivery of these very important targets, starting in the top of our companies, because it needs to start there. And when it starts there, it will gain momentum. Women on boards, there was the same degree initially of great lethargy. The talent's not there. We can't possibly do it in the time scale, but it was done. I have to say government support was very, very important in that, and indeed shareholder support. But I think to get real change, it takes many shoulders to the wheel. First of all, I think it's important to have targets. And in this case, we have them. The review provides them. Those targets need to be backed by government, and they are. Positive support from the media also drives opinions, and so far has been positive. Support from the investment community is crucial, and I believe we're headed in the right direction. And support from the CBI through this recent initiative of Race Matters, which we've worked with them on, is very important, and they're specifically backing these targets. And finally, events such as this do bring people who care together, and that helps create a certain degree of momentum. And as you said yourself at the beginning, to get so many people gathered on this crucial subject, half white, half black, half colored, you know, that's a fantastic achievement. And I doubt if we'd been able to do that even 4 or 5 years ago.
I doubt we'd have done this even a few months ago, to be honest with you. I'm astonished at it. And as you say, there's a book I love called Here Comes Everybody by Clay Shirky. And if anyone hasn't read it, I'd recommend you get it. Here Comes Everybody just talks about what happens when everyone joins hands, which of course.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But let me just ask you this question. What do you want the legacy of your report to be? It's hugely influential. Everyone's read it. But if you were just to, just think about the legacy of your report, what does good look like for you?
You know, I would love to see this ethnically diverse journey become a natural way of life in the boardroom in the future, just as I believe women on boards, the journey has now become.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's not a destination, because if we look at women on boards, the women, a number of them now are ambitious, and some have become chairs or wanting to become chief executives, and rightly so. And I would like then the natural journey to continue for ethnic-based candidates so that they too have that ambition and hopeful fulfillment.
Thank you, Sir John. Just a quick question around investor bases, because clearly corporations listen very carefully to those organizations that invest in them. Do you think that there is a role for pension funds and for asset managers to take a stand in this specific space and to say, we will not invest in you, or we will disinvest from you unless you demonstrate that you are getting to grips with this issue around ethnicity on your board? Is there a conversation to be had there, do you think?
Well, look, I think I would never prescribe or dare to preside to the investment community what they should do. I think it's filled with very smart people who are sensitive to what is happening socially. But there's no doubt investment community holds enormous power to influence things for the better. You can just think of the Norwegian fund, national fund, that's taken a huge stand on environmental issues and the impact that's had on some companies by saying, we won't invest in you anymore because you're not meeting certain targets. Now, it's a tough old conversation to have, but the reality is, at least they had that conversation with many of us. Certainly in the mining industry, for example, you should stop thermal coal, for example, investment in thermal coal. It's not easy to turn the tap off and just like that. You can't throw the lever. So, but those are grown-up conversations at least. And I think what I would urge is good dialogue amongst the investment community on this very sensitive subject, and then decide what pressures you feel you have got to exert. But I wouldn't dare be the one to give you the formula.
Well, I'm pulling questions now out of that are coming in, and so the last couple of questions aren't mine, but I'm just grabbing them. And so here's another question that has come in, which is around your point about targets, because if you do put targets in, or even if you do have aspirational numbers around the board, how do you prevent a sense that this is tokenism, that you're not really promoting people because of their merit, you're really doing it because of the color of their skin? And it gets a lot of people very edgy. This is a really difficult, I call it a wicked problem because it is so hard. How do you deal with it? You set targets, and at the same time you want people to feel as though they're being promoted on merit.
Well, I have to say, in the number of boards I've been in including chairing 6 FTSE 100s, I have never come across a situation where the person appointed felt they were token, nor were they ever treated in the boardroom as token candidates. I mean, people in boardrooms, they get there because they are on the main pretty competent and broad-based thinking people. In my book, they shouldn't be there unless they're capable of looking after a person of another color coming into their boardroom. I don't want narrow-minded people like that in the board. But I do think that I've not, as I say, I repeat, I have not seen anyone being treated, male or female, from the Black community or the Asian or whatever in the boardroom in all my time. People have gathered round, and in no time flat, they're one of the circle in the board. Just accepted. And if you've got progressive leadership in the board, they'll put a buddy beside them for a period of time to help them through the initial round. They'll make a very good induction program for them, etc., so that they feel at home and that they walk around the company, they see the company's operations, etc. And then it gives a huge signal to employees. This is a new board member, an ethnically diverse candidate for the first time, or whatever. And in 25 years, I have seen the richness of having diversity in the boardroom, both gender and ethnic, and the added value that it brings.
And what is, let's just get into that a little bit, that added value that sometimes people just say, well, why don't we just get the best person? And if they all happen to be white and they all happen to have gone to the same university, well, who cares? What is that value, do you think, that you get when you start to mix it up, either through having more women on the board or having more Black people on the board, just from a diversity perspective? What's the benefit?
I think it changes the dynamics in the boardroom. In my earlier days, there would be the noisy male or two who would dominate. When you bring women or ethnic candidates onto the board, they have a different style of approach, and it calms things down, in my view, which is for the better. You don't want somebody burning up the oxygen all the time in the boardroom. You want to create open, respectable, tough debate, of course. And we should have complete respect for that. As long as it's open, transparent, and no one's just scoring political points. If they are, a good chairman should intervene and deal with it. But I have seen the added value through I've mentioned it in passing on the way through, the different acute angle that women and ethnic candidates can come at an issue which is different from us males. And they can come and you get a refreshing insight that you hadn't even thought of.
Us white males.
Yes, us white males. Us white males. Yeah, yeah. I'm the base candidate here. So white male, yes. And so, and when you combine all of that together, it's very powerful. And it's amazing the talent you turn up. One of my last appointments at Anglo American was a lady who had been in one of the other big industrial companies in Southern Africa. And we appointed her. She had a domain knowledge of an area of our business. But she had a great personality and could really put extremely interesting questions across that some of us hadn't thought about. And I learned only a few weeks ago that she's been taken out of her non-executive position and put in as the head of our South African operations. So you can unearth some very interesting talent that sometimes then adds entirely different range of values to you.
Well, I am so grateful to you. We all are. Thank you very much indeed, Sir John, for spending a large part of your evening with us. That's been very insightful, very helpful. Thank you for your wisdom. And we'll let you go. I think we're going to put your camera off because we're now going to hear from Justin and Gavin. But once again, on behalf of all 1,000 plus delegates, Thank you very much indeed for all that you've shared with us this evening. So thank you.
My great pleasure, and thanks for everyone for being patient and listening.
Well, thank you very much, Sir John. And now what we're going to do is we are going to turn the mic over to Justin Onakusi. He heads up Elgim's retail multi-asset funds, and also Gavin Lewis, who is managing director at BlackRock and is responsible for the growth of local government business with their pension schemes. And both Justin and Gavin, super well known. You'll know both of them. They're doing incredible things in this space, in the industry. And they're both going to talk now for the next 10 minutes or so in total. And I'm going to hand the mic across to Justin. Justin, the mic's yours.
Yeah, thank you for joining the Talk About Black. Now we are going through a call to action. Firstly, Gavin is going to talk about the kinks in the hose pipe that we've mentioned in the past, and just why it's important to look at the challenge holistically. And then I will talk a little bit about allyship and how that's important to really moving the dial. So John's spoken about all shoulders need to be to the wheel. I will come and talk about how those shoulders get closer to the wheel than we are today. Gavin.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Thank you, David, for quarterbacking us. So the kinks in the hose pipe. So hopefully we're on the right slide. So you may have heard us talk about this before, and maybe I'll just give you a little bit of background around how we came up with this analogy. So in the early days of Talk About Black, so I guess going on 4 years ago, the original brief we were given on behalf of the Diversity Project was to resolve the challenge of BAME underrepresentation in the asset management industry. We felt that the acronym was too broad, so we focused on Black. But focusing on Black basically meant that we had to look at a broader range of topics than just the workplace. I think too often diversity and inclusion is seen as a workplace issue, and actually it's reflective of a wider societal issue. To really conceptualize the problems that Black professionals face, we use an analogy of a hose pipe, and the sense here is that there are challenges or kinks in the hose pipe that Black people and or professionals face. And to allow that professional to reach its full potential, or if you will, to allow the water to reach the end or exit the hose pipe, you need to unkink those kinks, remove those obstacles. There's no point in just removing one because basically the water gets blocked either further or behind. So you need to, as Justin said, think about things holistically and unkink all the kinks in the hose pipe. So for us, there are basically 5 kinks. The first is this sense of community, the socioeconomic context that many Black people, particularly UK-born Black people, find themselves in. And that is a high propensity to be unemployed, health inequality, victims of crime, and the epicenter of this is economic disenfranchisement. The second is about the pipeline, and this really represents itself or manifests itself in an underperformance in education. So we find that Black students are not fulfilling their potential academically. Should an individual achieve a good education, again, we're finding that there are challenges in actually accessing the industry, and that's either the industry finding and taking on these individuals, or actually those individuals wanting to actually work in the asset management and associated industries. Once in the industry, we're finding that there's a problem with progression. So there are higher rates of attrition, lower rates of career progression, and it's one of the reasons why we find at mid and senior levels there's an underrepresentation of Black professionals. So again, if you've heard me speak, I always say this, I'm still waiting for someone to challenge me, but we're still yet to see a CEO of an a Black CEO of an asset manager in the UK. I'll pause. 1,000 people, no one's popped up and said, yes, it's me, or yes, I know one, so we're still at the same place. And the final thing, which I think Sir John and David talked about so eloquently, is the fact that it's still a taboo subject. We can't talk about it. So if you can't talk about the subject, how can you actually deal with it? So in Talk About Black, we set these challenges out, and we didn't just want to be, I guess, a lobby group or an activist group. We wanted to be a group that actually found solutions, and Black people actually finding solutions for ourselves, not in isolation, but in partnership with different elements of the industry. So I'll just talk you through some of those solutions that we have implemented. The first is for the pipeline. So recently you would have heard us talk about and launch the Catalyst After School Programme, and that's in conjunction with the City of London Corporation, the Chartered Institute of Securities Investment, obviously the Diversity Project, and a range of fund managers from the industry. And that really is us unkinking the early part of that pipeline. The second is basically trying to attract people to the industry, and we're pleased now to be partnering with 100 Black Interns and actually implementing their very ambitious program. In terms of the progression, we have 2 mentoring initiatives. The first are the End Circle Mentoring Circles, and the second is, again, recently launched, the C-Suite -1 or 2, aimed at Black professionals, where they'll be mentored by 16 CEOs. And the final bit is things that we're doing now. For example, the I Am campaign, which you probably would have seen on LinkedIn if you browsed your profile, and events such as this. You'll notice that the community one probably is the most difficult one, because how can we as an asset management industry resolve societal issues? We've said this is 2021. This is a big ambition for us. So watch this space. But look, I am pleased that we have, I feel, made a dent. After 4 years, we have tangible, actionable programs in place. For example, 100 Black Interns, 200 fund managers signed up. The Circle Mentoring Circles are now every month. So we are making traction, but we can't do this alone. So that partnership is critical. And we thank you to all the partners, and I'll hand back over to Justin.
Thank you, Gavin. You mentioned the partners, and Sir John mentioned the media, the government, the CBI, and the investment community all coming together. Allies are clearly important to solving underrepresentation of marginalised groups, and allyship is something that we feel is necessary to create a level playing field. So if we move on to the next slide, I've mentioned in the past that allyship is a verb. It's not an identity. It's not a noun. You actually have to do something to create this level playing field. Now, after the I Am event that we had in June time, we sent a number of resources out, one for corporates, one for individuals, and we specified how you can get more involved, how you can be a true ally. And we still had lots of questions coming through from individuals saying, oh, that's really good, great resource, but actually what tangibly can we do? So what we try to do here is to specify the different types of allyship and how each of those allies can make a difference in really unkinking that hose pipe that Gavin mentioned. So the first one is champions. And these are the allies we all know about. They're in the public domain, and they're supporting underrepresented groups in that public domain. Speakers like Sir John, like Michelle you heard earlier, but actually Gavin and Dawid as well. You don't have to be a certain ethnicity to be an ally. So sitting on panels, sitting in conferences, industry-wide events. But importantly, there are many other ways you can be an ally. So secondly, scholar. These are people who are often completely overlooked, but actually they're the people who learn about the challenges, learn about the prejudices, and really investigate, read, watch documentaries, but importantly, they pass on this knowledge to others. I think that again is vitally important and a vital type of ally. The third one is sponsor. And I think this word is often overused, but essentially these are the people who, when you're not there, are in the room fighting your corner. When it comes to the promotion process, when it comes to performance calibration, they are the people who are challenging that process, which has led to underrepresentation in the past. Fourthly, you come on to the supporters or the confidants. You might want to call them confidants. And these are really people who create those safe spaces for underrepresented groups. They may be a shoulder to lean on. They may create environments to express fears, frustrations, gaps in organizations. And finally, you come on to the upstanders. And these are, it's the opposite of bystanders in a way. And these are people who speak out against wrongdoing. in particular in the mentoring circles, the end circle mentoring circles that Gavin mentioned, one of the chief reasons that people say that they're not progressing through organizations is down to microaggressions. So these upstanders are people who will speak out against these microaggressions and allow people to understand how it's affecting others. So to be an ally, you don't necessarily have to be a champion. You can be a scholar, you can be a sponsor, you can be a supporter, you can be an upstander. In order to unkink the hosepipe, we need individuals of all ethnicities to really take responsibility and really try to put aside company loyalties and really try and unkink that hosepipe, as I mentioned. If we want to be truly proud of the industries that we work in, if you want to really create a level playing field for all, I think it's really important to understand the impact that allyship can have in doing so. Thank you for listening, and I will hand back to Dawid at this point.
Thanks so much, Justin. Thanks so much, Gavin. That was powerful. Look, it's coming up time to close. We just got a couple of minutes, and I just want to say what an awesome evening this is. If you've shown up this evening and given up an hour and a bit of your time, thank you so much for that. I think looking at that poll that we did, only 40% of you are optimistic. Everybody else is not in a great place. People are hurting, people are angry, people are exhausted. We have to fix this. We have to fix this. This is we don't have an option. And one of the questions that people have is, well, what part can I play? What can I do? And both Justin and Gavin have been through that now, and they very clearly articulated some of the things you can do. I thought I'd run a quick poll and ask you this question. Let's very quickly do this. I'm going to put it up. But the question is a very simple yes/no question, which is, do you want to get involved? And if you do, well, just tick the yes box and we'll get back to you and just come back to you with some ideas about how you can get involved. Ask you, what do you care about? What can you do? How can you assist? And we will come back to you, and very quickly in the next, we don't have a huge amount of time to get this thing done, get this thing fixed. We've talked about it. We've had a great report written. We've had Sir John himself to come and talk to us, and still the talking goes on, and still there's a mountain to climb to get this fixed. Still, people go home every evening and don't want to go to work the next day because it isn't working for them. By the way, it's not just about race. It's about a ton of different people, people in different minorities. Maybe they're part of the LGBTQ community. Maybe you're a woman, but maybe it's just not working for you. This is all part of that same discussion. How do we fix this? And so if you want to be involved in this particular issue around race, and by the way, when we fix this, it opens the door to us going in and fixing some of the other problems that we've still got. Okay, I'm just gonna, I don't know whether, look at the number. Do you want to get involved? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna read this out. I've done a ton of polls in my time. I've never seen this number come up before. Here's the number of people who said, yes, I'd like to be involved. 99.8%. Okay, I don't know what to do with that. That's basically everybody. Like I said, this is a here comes everybody moment. We will get back to you. We've got over 1,000 people on this call. Think about that. If everybody joins hands, everybody comes together, and everybody says we're going to do something, it's going to change. We're going to see change. And so, John, the legacy of your report is going to be exactly what you hoped it was going to be. So I just want to close by just saying this event has been recorded, so you can watch it. We'll send you an email with a link, and you can share that around. You can share it with colleagues. You're going to get some follow-up links, like I just said. But look, let's just stay in touch on this. 1,000 people have turned up, and 1,000 people have said we want to be part of this. Well, this is where it all starts to change. So thank you all very much. Thanks very much indeed again, Legal & General, Elgin, for putting this on. We appreciate it. Couldn't have done it without you. Sir John, thank you so much for coming and sharing your time this evening. And thank you to everybody who signed up, who registered, and who came along this evening. Thank you to the team, by the way. There's been a huge production team at the back of this. I want to thank all of you guys as well, especially Nita. YLM, you've done a fantastic job. So thank you all, and we'll speak again soon. Take care.